Hey guys, what's going on? Brian Burns here with the Master Key Group at RE/MAX Downtown, and we're talking about the fundamentals of real estate investing. Now, particularly what we've been going over is the real estate investor's worst nightmare, and that is capital gains taxes. Now, we also have a superhero to this story, and that is 1031 exchange, okay? So what we're gonna talk about first today is why you would do a 1031 exchange. Now, the obvious reason is you have one investment property, you wanna sell it, and then you'd like to buy another one. But there are a couple other reasons that come into play. So right here we have moving markets. Remember when we were talking about California and New York and other states that have higher income taxes that you're going to be charged on top of your capital gains taxes? A lot of people want to avoid that, so what they'll do is they will move their investments. They can sell their homes in California, New York, and other high tax areas, and they can move them to a location like Florida that has 0% income tax, so that way they're not charged as much when they do have to realize those capital gains, all right? The next thing is estate planning. Now, this sounds like rich people problems, but say you are getting older and you own a large apartment complex and you have 3 children. You may not want to leave them all one large apartment complex. You may want to sell it and then buy maybe 3 individual duplexes that you can deed out to each one of them individually, something like that. The other thing would be a professional reason. So what you can do with real estate is, say you are an investor and you've purchased a couple duplexes throughout your life, and then you decided that you wanted to start a business. Now, while you cannot use capital gains to purchase a bit or to start a business, you can use your gains to purchase the retail space or the office space that you're going to be working out of. Now, this is great because you can do it kind of like why people buy duplexes. People will buy a duplex, they'll live in one side, and then they'll rent the other side out to cover their mortgage. So you can do the same thing with office space. Say you only needed one section of the office and you purchased maybe like a strip mall or something. Your office can be one of those buildings, but then the other areas in the strip mall can actually pay for whatever mortgage that you'd have to take, or it could be just straight up earnings for you, okay? The other reason that people would do it is for joint ownership. Say you and a family member have purchased a property together or a business partner, and then you guys have made enough money from that and you guys want to go your separate ways. Maybe one person wants to go buy retail space and rent that out. Maybe you want to go buy some duplexes or something like that for whatever reason. Remember though, how you exchange the property has to be done in the same way that you sold it. So if Brian Burns LLC sells a property, the exchange has to be done by Brian Burns LLC. I have to then purchase it in the same way. If I, as a single person, Brian Burns, purchase a property sell a property, then I can go ahead and purchase it in the same manner. Now, the other thing is your depreciation limit. Now, it seems like a very far distant thought, but you can only account for depreciation for 27 and a half years. So if you've owned the property coming up on 27 years, it might be time to start thinking maybe I should sell it so that I can keep getting those tax benefits from the depreciation. The other thing, to move to a better return market. So you might have you might have purchased a home in a booming market at the time, and maybe 5, 6, 10 years later, it's still doing well, but there's another great emerging market that you want to get access to. So you might sell that property and then move it over to the new high earning point. To consolidate or to diversify. So one way you might do this is, a lot of people, they'll purchase maybe 3, 4 duplexes, and then once there's enough equity, they may say, well, these properties are all kind of spread out and a little bit hard to manage. I would like to have all of my resources in one spot, so now I can buy an apartment complex. Now I can manage these units a little bit easier than it is to manage spread out 4 duplexes. Or, kind of like what we discussed with estate planning, maybe you want to diversify your portfolio. Maybe you own a large apartment building and you said, you know what, this investment has kind of run its course, so I would like to maybe I want to buy some retail space, maybe some, a duplex over here, and then maybe some vacant land that I think is going to go up in value. So you can diversify your portfolio just kind of like a stock portfolio, all right? So that is the reasons why you would kind of, convert to primary. That's the big one. That is actually the most important one, and we're going to go over that at the end. So glad I didn't miss that. Now, when you are doing a 1031 exchange, you do have to replace the property with what's called like kind. The nice part about real estate is it really generally has to do with land, okay? Because you could sell a house and you would say, well, an industrial park is not like kind. I mean, this is like, you could you have like a, whatever, a gravel factory, you know what I mean, that makes gravel, and you sold a home to do that. That's not like kind. Well, it is, okay? So you have a lot of these things that are really just have to do more so with land. Now, one thing you can't do, remember we talked about getting some commercial space, you cannot use it as a startup. So I can't say I need $50,000 to start my business, but if you were to purchase commercial space, say you wanted to start a restaurant, you can use the money to outfit the building that you buy to do what your business is going to do. Okay, so something to think about. Otherwise, like kind is retail, single family, goes all the way down to industrial and commercial. All right, now, some miscellaneous things about this is a build to suit. So for instance, say you were to sell your properties and then you wanted to, say, build a multifamily home on a lot. You will have certain timelines, and we'll talk about that here, that you have to meet. Now, these timelines are very strict and you have to be done. The exchange has to be completed within 180 days of the selling, the actual closing of the property, of the first property that sells, all right? So repairs, say you were to buy a distressed home and you wanted to rent it out, but it needed a lot of work. You can still use your capital gains to go ahead, you can still use the proceeds from your sale to go ahead and do those repairs. But once again, it has to be done within that 180-day time period. Now, another term that people use is called a cash boot. So a lot of people, they want to know, well, what if I can't spend it all? Generally, you want to try and spend more than less, so that way you don't have anything left over. But say you really don't want to go that much over, and then you end up with $10,000 still left over from the sale. You will pay capital gains only on what's remaining, okay? So it's not an all or nothing. If you have $10,000 left over, you'll still get charged that capital gains on what's left, all right? And that is what's called the cash boot. All right, now the other thing that's crazy is called a reverse exchange. Say you've been waiting for a home to come on into a market that you're very, very interested in, and then all of a sudden it comes up and you know it's going to go fast, but you want to do a 1031 exchange for it. You can actually, as long as you have the proceeds to close, do a reverse exchange. So what will happen is that the property will be held basically by another company until you have the sale of your other property that you would use as an exchange, okay? A lot of times, what you'll end up using is what's called a 1031 intermediary. They will be able to handle a lot of this stuff for you. So if you are looking to do a 1031 exchange, I would highly recommend looking into that, okay? Now, 1031 timeline. Now, within 45 days of the sale of the property, the closing of it, you have to identify properties that you want to then purchase. Now, the thing with this is say you find something on day one and you go, oh, this is perfect. I won't have to go around and start looking for properties. Even though you found one, you still want to identify others. Say we are on this property, all right? Say we found this one on day 20, all right? And we have a 30-day closing. Say on day 46, after the sale of your property, say on day 46, the sale falls through of this one and you did not identify any other properties, now you're stuck paying capital gains taxes because you need to identify those. So even if you are under contract, even if a second best, third best option comes along, you still want to identify them. And it's super easy to do. All you have to do is send the address over to your intermediary and they'll register it as an identified property. So that way you're not getting caught holding the bag at the end of the day if the deal falls through. So the other thing is you have 180 days to complete the exchange. Remember that if you're building a home on it, has to be done within 180 days. If you're doing any repairs, has to be done within 180 days. All right? Now, a lot of people, they don't realize that, capital gains is seen as something that's for an investment property. They don't realize that you actually will have to pay capital gains if you experience a gain from a primary residence. So, but you are exempt from a certain amount of capital gains taxes because it's a primary residence. So this is where we introduce 1031 exchanges sidekick, and that's section 121, okay? So section 121, if you're a single person, you're exempt from $250,000 in capital gains, and if you're married, you get exempt from $500,000 in capital gains. This is fantastic. So usually when you do experience, say you were to sell your home and you were to make $300,000 on the sale, your net proceeds, usually you're buying another property and you're putting most of that money into the next house, right? But if you were to sell the property, make $300,000 off of it and not buy another one, you actually would still have to pay capital gains taxes. Same thing with this one, if a married person with over $500,000. Now what we can do is we can couple this with a 1031 exchange, and here's how you do it. The requirements: you have to own it for 5 years. You have to rent it for the first 2, because remember, what you do is you will take, say you have 4 duplexes over the course of your lifetime, and you decided, you know what, I would like to retire. I don't want to be a landlord anymore. I want to now take these 4 properties, sell them, and then combine them. Okay, we do a 1031 exchange, and then rather than to diversify, we consolidate it into a single investment property, and maybe this will be your forever retirement home, right? So we take those 4 properties, consolidate them. For it to be an investment property, you have to rent it out for the first 2 years. After that, you have to only own it for 5 years, and it has to be your primary residence for at least 2. Then after that, you will not be forced to pay any of the capital gains taxes, which can save you a huge amount of money. It gives you a ton of opportunities. So I know that's a lot, and what we're going to do next week is we're going to go over an actual example of that, of how to purchase the properties, hold on to them, and what it would look like on the outcome when you actually combine them all and do the combo here, the 1031 exchange and the Section 121. All right, I'll talk to you then. Bye.